I've cleared 2 prelims. I could not clear the very first one. Some really important questions that UPSC asks about directive principles of state policies, about the idea of liberty, etc., which are often a little difficult to answer if you've just read this book. It's going to help you relate art and culture and ancient and medieval history together. For the third block is medieval history. Pretty tough because a lot of terms that were used related to governance, related to economy and polity of that time are being asked from this section. So polity was a low-hanging fruit for me. These two were a little tough, so I would not say that they are low-hanging fruits. Modern history was a low-hanging fruit for me.
Unacademy. Let's crack it.
Hello everyone, my name is Asad Zubairi and I have secured an All India rank of 86 in UPSC Civil Service Examination 2022. This was my third attempt at this exam and my optional is anthropology. This was my brief introduction. To tell you a little bit more, I am a mechanical engineer who passed out from MNNIT Allahabad in 2019. And today I am here to discuss about an outline of resources that I use for UPSC prelims. And in all the 3 attempts that I've given, these resources have been constant for me. I've cleared 2 prelims. I could not clear the very first one. So without wasting much time, let's just jump on the resources I've used. So for the very first time, to start with, let's see the blocks that we have to cover for prelims. So if you see the syllabus of prelims, it's a little loosely defined, but still we can identify these blocks. The very first one is polity and Constitution of India. Then history is broken down into ancient history, medieval history, modern history, art and culture. It's a very important part these days. Geography, environment and ecology, Indian economy, science and technology, maps, very scoring and it's often very ignored too, but this part is very scoring for me. At least for me, it was a really nice part. Maps and current affairs. So these are an overall overview of what we're supposed to cover. Let's jump on to the sources I've used to cover these. So starting with Indian polity and constitution, it's a very well-known and very compact kind of a topic, also very scoring topic. I have used this book called Lakshmikant. It's written by M. Lakshmikant and it's a very famous book. Almost everyone who prepares for this exam refers to this book. Apart from that, I've referred to this Indian Constitution at Work NCERT. It's a very beautiful small book which will give you an idea about some really important questions that UPSC asks about directive principles of state policies, about the idea of liberty, etc., which are often a little difficult to answer if you've just read this book. So in my case, it was Lakshmikant and NCERT, the small one. The second one, and also one thing I would like to tell you that this section is usually very predictable. So please read this so well that any question that is coming, at least you have more than 95% hit rate in this section, because prelims is becoming increasingly tough. So we cannot ignore the sections that are low hanging. So I consider this as one of the low hanging fruits. So please prepare this well. Moving ahead, the second part is ancient history. So pretty tough part. This was a part that I struggled with a lot. But then I have done something that I've done as much as I could do. There's this very nice book, NCERT, old NCERT. It was written by R. Sharma. So you can refer to this book. A lot of things about Buddhism, Jainism, which will be used in art and culture as well. See, I've written it down here too. So that is given. Apart from that, this book is a very compact source of ancient history. So please read it. I also made notes out of it, but it's your own call. Apart from that, it's a very nice textbook of Tamil Nadu board, textbook for ancient history. A lot of people who prepare, they also refer to this book. It will be really nice practice if you refer to this as well. Moving ahead, also this section is a little unpredictable, so you should not go around multiple sources because there's always something that you might not have read, even after reading these sources or even more than that. So please limit these sources, at least for this section. I would say for everything, and revise as much as you can. So the third source for the third block is medieval history. Pretty tough because a lot of terms that were used related to governance, related to economy and polity of that time are being asked from this section. As well as some very important era like Vijayanagara Empire, etc., it becomes important as far as the UPSC prelims exam is concerned. So for medieval history, I have read this old NCERT that is written by Satish Chandra sir, and there's a very nice new compilation of this NCERT too. You can find it in the market. So you can buy this book, and this was my one-stop solution for medieval history. It's a little thick, so you can pick up some things that that you would like to read in this section. Also, please do the PYQs well. I forgot to list this because this is common for almost everything. So if you're doing the PYQ well, then you will be able to answer many questions that are being asked off topics too. So that is my source for medieval history. Moving ahead to modern history, I will do one thing. I will mark some sources that I consider to be as a low-hanging fruits, and you should not ignore them. So polity was a low-hanging fruit for me. These two were a little tough, so I would not say that they are low-hanging fruits. Modern history was a low-hanging fruit for me. So I was doing all these topics very well. So for my modern history, I have referred to this book called Spectrum. Almost everyone who is preparing referred to this book because it's a good small book that has a lot of information in it, very relevant for prelims exam. Apart from that, the old NCERT written by Bipin Chandra sir, I have done some selective reading from here, but this is something that you can ignore too. If you don't have time, you can choose not to read this, but at least read the Spectrum well, because mostly the questions can be solved from this book itself. So that is what I did for modern history. So we are identifying the low-hanging fruits, polity and modern history. Moving ahead to art and culture. One of the most dreaded sections of UPSC as far as prelims as well as mains is concerned. I struggled a lot with this section, but the resources that I've used is old NCERT, not old NCERT, this NCERT. It's a red color book. It's called Introduction to Art and Culture. So please read that book. It's a very descriptive book that has a lot of pictures that will help you to relate with what you are reading. So you can start with reading this red colored NCERT, Introduction to Art and Culture. You've already read R. Sharma, old NCERT for ancient history. So you can relate some of these things in both the art and culture as well as the ancient history section. Moving ahead, I got this very nice source, Nitin Sangwan sir notes, because this book called Nitin Singhania was a little thick for me, and I am someone who has a tough time to study because I am not fond of studies that much. I would not say that I don't enjoy it, but then it's tough for me to cover thick sources. So for me, I could not get myself to read Nitin Singhania completely. I know that is my weakness. If you can, well and good. If you cannot, you can refer to Nitin Sangwan sir's notes. It's like the compact version of Nitin Singhania book itself. So it's a very good source both for prelims and mains. One of the best part of this is that sir has compiled the entire syllabus chronologically. That means it's going to help you relate art and culture and ancient and medieval history together, and these are themes on which UPSC is asking a lot of questions these days. So we are done with our 5 blocks. Moving ahead, the 6th block, again I would say this is a low hanging fruit for me, that is geography. So we have seen that in prelims they are focusing more on physical geography rather than the part about resources or the part about human geography. So physical geography for me was very interesting. It's a scientific kind of logic that is applied in understanding geography. So I had a very nice time reading it, and I just used these sources. NCERT, extremely useful books, both 11th and 12th. You should read them multiple times. You should practice these diagrams well for your mains, but for your prelims, read it really well. NCERT both for 11th and 12th. And then this beautiful book called G.C. Leong. Now it has 2 parts, part 1 and part 2. Both the parts are given in the same book. So what I did is I read part 1, which is mostly the repetition of 11th class NCERT, the physical NCERT. However, part 1 had very nice diagrams. I will let you know the use of those diagrams when I start discussing the mains part. But part 2 was mostly about the climate, and this part I made notes of and then I did not refer to it. So please read both the parts for it. It will help you get an overall idea and will help you develop extremely nice concepts in physical as well as parts of human geography and the world geography too. So These two sources I have referred, and it was one of my objective to not go wrong in this subject because it's a low hanging fruit for me. Next, we move ahead to environment and ecology. So it was a little tough for me to prepare this part because there's no single source for this, and it's very tough to predict the questions that where will he ask them from. So I referred to a coaching material. You can always go for it. It's a compilation of basic concepts, the static part of environment, and it is largely current affairs based. So you can either go for monthly compilation or yearly compilation. It completely depends on you, apart from the newspapers that you are reading. So environment and ecology, in my case, it was not my strength. So I just read the coaching material and the current affairs, and I was trying to not get a lot of negatives in this part. So this is another thing that we can discuss about prelims, that you should work on your strengths and you should try not to get a lot of negatives from your weakness, and you should identify it the way I am doing it. Maybe environment can be your strength. In my case, it was geography, polity and modern history. Moving ahead, when we come to Indian economy, extremely important part for prelims, and most of the things that they check in economy in prelims are about the basic concepts, like the concept of money, concept of high powered money, concept of liquidity, concept of repo, reverse repo, etc. So for this part, I have referred to make my base 11th and 12th class NCERTs. So 11th and 12th class NCERT will build the base for you, because I was someone who did not read economics for my 11th and 12th as well. So I referred to these first, and then I referred to Murnal sir classes and his notes. They are very exhaustive. You can refer to them. This can be a 1-point solution for you. So these two things will do the thing for you. Also, in when you're attempting a paper for the economy section, please try to be very clear on your concepts, because the paper is going to check how solid your preparation is for the macroeconomics concept. Okay, the concept of money, etc., that I talked about. And also, this is a low hanging fruit for me. If you are doing these parts right, then the other parts, the other questions that are being asked randomly can also be figured out. Moving ahead to the portion of science and technology, again a very loosely defined portion in the syllabus, and there's no 1-point solution to it. It's so for me, my 1-point source for this was coaching material compilations that I was reading. Either you are reading a monthly compilation or you are reading a yearly compilation, and apart from that, the current affairs. So there's a very nice source for it. If you are reading this newspaper called The Hindu, then weekly they have a page on science and technology in it. So you can either make notes out of it because it's just 1 page a week, or you can just read it so that you get an idea about what is going on in science and technology. And I would not call it a low hanging fruit because it's usually very loosely defined. It can ask you things from genetics, it can ask you things from space technology, it can ask you anything from biology, etc. So this part was not so easy for me to prepare. Moving ahead, the 10th block that we're talking about were maps. So this can be also considered as a part of geography, but for me, I was really fond of reading maps. As a child too, I was just reading about different kind of maps in the world, which country touch another country. So this was something that I would say was a low hanging fruit for me because I was preparing it well. And believe me, if you prepare these well, you are going to get a lot of benefit because UPSC is asking very nice questions from this section. So I read this atlas. It's a black colored atlas for me by Orient Longman. You can take any other atlas as well to prepare the static part. Now, what is the static part of maps? A lot of people ask this. So for me, it was about the oceans, about the islands, it was about the passes, okay, it was about the seas, etc. So these things are about if you can consider India, about rivers, their tributaries, about mountains. So these are the static parts for maps. And if you're actually prepared these well, so a lot of question, even when they come from the current part, will revolve around them. And if you have covered these well, then you can eliminate a lot of options. So I would say, do not ignore this part. Read the atlas well so that you're very well prepared with the static part. And also keep an eye for what is happening in the current affairs. For example, recently there was an insurgency in Sudan. So a question came on Sudan in prelims. There are some things are going on in Ukraine. So there was a question asked on Kherson region. So you should have an eye for what is happening in the current affairs, and you can predict a lot of questions that are going to be asked from this section. So again, it's a low-hanging fruit because it's predictable, and please prepare it well. Also, it's fun to prepare. Also, a lot of institutes are releasing the coaching material for this section as well, compilations. So you can also refer to that. That's a good idea. Moving ahead, the last part is current affairs. So again, this part is not so defined because current affairs can be asked from any section. It's so vast that you cannot be sure that you have prepared a certain section well. So for these, I was reading newspapers well. I am someone who likes to read newspapers since a long time, even before UPSC. So I was reading newspapers well. I was reading either the Hindu or the Indian Express interchangeably. So it's not like you have to read more than 2-3 newspapers. You can always stick to one newspaper. If you get bored of it, you can always switch to another newspaper, but read some newspaper because it helps you to develop a good memory, a good recall of the things that are happening, because relevant news, they keep on coming in the newspaper every other day. So I relied on the newspapers, and then on compilations. I did not do monthly compilation. I just did the yearly compilation for prelims. Now this is again a personal call. If you're someone who's reading monthly compilations very religiously, you can ignore the yearly compilations. But for me, it was not possible to read monthly because I could not get time to it, and I could not absorb so much content every month. So I was just reading the yearly compilation. So this was in general the list that I have used for my preparation of prelims. And lastly, I would say, just wait a second. Lastly, I would say you need to play on strengths, minimize negative in weaknesses. I think this is very important. You should analyze PYQs. You should keep your calm in while attempting the paper. I think this is something that is becoming more relevant than all the sources that I've talked about, because the paper can ask new pattern of questions. The paper can ask very difficult questions, very easy questions, a mixture of both. Just keep your calm. Don't expect anything easy from UPSC. You can expect that the paper is going to throw very challenging stuff to your way. So if you keep your calm, you can actually manage your resources well and can manage the paper in a best possible manner with the information that you have in your mind. So with this, I would just end this because I've listed all the resources. I would just say stick to these resources or any resources that you are reading, repeat them, revise them, and just practice as much as you can. All the best.